So welcome to my site, everybody. My name is Paul Smyers, and if you explore the content on my site here, you'll find I talk a lot about consciousness and mysteries of the mind and soul and esoteric theology and philosophy and so on. And I talk a lot about perception because perception itself is really our little point of attention here. We all have one, and wherever we put that little attention, that's where our life goes, kind of, and what we understand. And you can put your attention on music or some other kind of profession and physics or so on. You can pursue that all your life, and that's the needle that goes with you. It draws a thread of your life through that kind of a subject matter, you might say. And we all wonder, what is consciousness and how does telepathy work? Because this video here is going to be about telepathy, and bear with me for a minute. I'll just tell you, I'm not a so-called expert or authority. I do practice meditation, have for a long time, and I've been a student of many esoteric books and theology and so on for many years. But what I tell you in this video is I want you to explore the subject of telepathy and realize how anything I could refer you in a direction and learn is you follow that and get your own answers, because I can tell you that if you follow what I say and listen a little bit and bear with me a little bit about the psychology, about the physics of the universe and so on, from what I know, I'm just a reporter here, but I read a lot of books and listen to a lot of people. So basically, if you follow what I'm teaching you here, giving you information, you'll find that tremendous amount of revelations and personal understanding will happen. Now, let's get into this a little bit here. Telepathy is a subject that is very fascinating to a lot of people. We get into like this discussion sometimes around the campfire or whatever, and people say, "Oh, I read your mind. I got a phone call. We called each other at the same exact time, and we made a connection or something." Or people channel. To me, telepathy is the subject that involves all kinds of communication of information across the whole spectrum of awareness, and that the human being is like a radio. We have a little brain here, and we can tune it in, and it's very, very sophisticated. It's way more sophisticated than our phones and so on. This brain, the technology of this brain, this whole body is amazing technology because it's way bigger than an iPhone. It has like hands, and it's got all kinds of features and sense organs and so on. And we know that all our sense organs, we can train them to get more and more subtle reception and so on. And there are people who are gifted in certain areas of their senses, like sound or light or whatever. So what I'm getting at here is the concept of telepathy involves the communication of information, because we live in an information universe. Essentially, the universe is one consciousness. This is what all the great sages say, and people who go in deep meditation, they just experience, okay, ultimately, our consciousness arises from the infinite and energy. There's all kinds of information, consciousness associated with information, and the information runs this universe. Everywhere we look, in the DNA and the plants and the geology and everything, there's memory, and there's information being shared and conveyed and communicated, whether it's like insects, they smell, and they have these little antennas, and they experience life in totally different ways than we do. The whole idea of telepathy involves the so-called rain cloud of knowable things, that there's a ultimate source of information, you might say, like you say the ocean. Okay, the ocean has millions and millions and billions of beings in it, and all live, and they just come from the ocean, and maybe they have some membrane, maybe they're just a tiny little bacteria or a jellyfish, and then maybe they get into be a shark, and they've got a whale or something, and maybe a crustacean. They have these hard shells and all that. All of that is in the ocean, and eventually it all goes back into the ocean, and that's it. So our consciousness arises from the womb, from our mother's. There's consciousness involved in our cells, and there's information being shared and conveyed, and there's things going on. There's sound, and there's light, and there's heat, and all this stuff going on in the womb, and then we come out and we keep growing and growing, and we go about our business and go shopping or whatever, and we have no clue what really going on with our situation. Our whole being is immersed. So telepathy involves the communication instantaneously, or not always instantaneously, but what you might not expect as far as transmitting across a distance. And ultimately, the sages say all the information that we need to know, the answers to all our questions, comes from within. And how does that work, actually? You see, there's a knowledge of all knowledges, which allows us to put our own consciousness back into feeling the energy in our and hearing the energy inside us, and feeling everything within us. And we get immersed into that source of all consciousness, just like the ocean, the soil. You take the soil across the whole country is one big soil, and has incredible numbers of beings in that soil, and different kinds of soil and pockets of different things. And same way with the ocean, there's different currents over here and different temperatures over there, but ultimately it's one big ocean, you see. So this realm of infinite consciousness, or infinite information, is, we can tap into it, but we have to get away from our limited perception. See, let's say, you have a little straw, and you're looking through life and just through a little tiny straw, and that's all you see. Well, you can see something, but it isn't much. You don't even realize that you're missing it. So then you get a little pipe, maybe about, a 6-inch pipe, pretty big. So you're looking through that. Well, now you can see a whole lot more, but you're still missing a lot, you see. So our consciousness, we have to make the lens of our consciousness, or the receptor of our consciousness, very, very wide and subtle. Let's say, now, just for an analogy, look at a jellyfish. A jellyfish floats in the ocean and has certain mechanism. It goes up and down or whatever, but a lot of times it just drifts along the ocean, and the delicate nature of its tentacles and its the construction is just barely just salt water and membranes and some minerals and so on, and it's functioning as a consciousness, floating along in the ocean and finding its way, sensing what food it wants to have, and has its own way of being sustained and so on. Our being is, you might say, like one of these beings is floating through the universe. You might say the infinite sea of energy. We all know it's all frequency, it's all energy. And it just so happens that this body that we have has a whole lot of incredible features, like buttons that, let's say you buy a Rolls Royce, and all you know is you turn on the radio and the lights, and that's all you know. But you don't realize that there's a whole lot of other stuff you can do, like the cockpit of a big plane. Like, you look around and holy crap, it looks simple on the outside, but you go inside, it's like, whoa, there's a whole lot of buttons here. This thing must do a lot of different stuff. Same way with this body, this being that we're living in here. See, so we're talking here about telepathy and the conveying of information. Now, the way it works is that it's just like a tuning fork. Our body, our whole system, the composite of our energy system, the chakras and everything, whatever it is extremely complex, and it's like we're just going about our business, shopping, and this huge, complex, incredible thing is happening constantly to keep us alive while we're busy doing a bunch of nonsense. But telepathy has to do with opening our consciousness to the answers within, the knowledge within, so that we can link consciously with that infinite consciousness and start to explore it, you see. And then we don't have to argue anymore, because that's one of the reasons they talk a lot about perception, because if we agree that green is green, and the blue sky and the white clouds and water is beautiful, we need it, and food is wonderful, and we agree on all those things, we don't argue about stuff. We have the same common interest and perception. When we have the same common interest and perception in the deeper aspects of our nature, and that we can get a lot of our own very complex answers from within through a direct knowledge, gnosis, knowing, there's things we need to know. I mean, if you're going in a jungle, let's say this world is a jungle, we got to navigate. We get born here and taught a bunch of stuff and say, okay, good, sonny boy, off you go, make a life for yourself, and have fun, but we don't know what's going on this planet. We just get born here. We get taught by people different things we got to believe and think about and stuff, and then next thing you know, we're on the treadmill making a living or something. We don't really accept we are these beings that can immerse ourselves into this infinite consciousness on a daily basis, and according to the yogis, like a 24-hour basis. but it's extremely complex. There's a science to this, and again, I say I'm not an expert. I've been a student for a long time. I've amazed in my experience so far, but holy cow, I don't know much. You see all these books here? These are just small selection of books that you could get into and explore. I've talked about some of them in my other videos, but regarding telepathy, it has to do with opening our own inner sense to tune that inner radio, because we have a radio that can tune across a huge spectrum. Even like the visual spectrum is pretty big. You can see a whole bunch of different colors. You can hear a whole bunch of different sounds. People can smell different smells. There's all kinds of sensations we have. Our hairs can sense the pressure, the humidity in the environment, the electrical situation going on. We have this whole sense organ, this whole body and being and the energy around it, the aura, I might say, that is a composite sensing organism that we can tune into just a little at a time. I mean, honestly, there's things that we don't want to perceive, okay? We don't want to see how, imagine if bugs were huge, okay? They're so ugly we wouldn't want to look at it. We'd be terrified just to see so many of them, you know? So thankfully we don't see them, but there's probably bugs living on our body right now that if we saw them, you know, a million times bigger, then it would freak us out. So there's perception areas that we don't really want to get into. That's why, good Lord, whatever, gave us these certain limits within a range, but our musical intonation skills can get subtler and subtler, and there's a music from within, there's a sound from within that is natural, and there's no, you'll never get tired listening to that sound, and it'll never hurt you. Same way the inner light, the same way the inner sweetness. There are inner aspects of our being, endocrine glands, all kinds of things, systems in our body that allow us to experience this existence in a vastly expanded way. And it's a very private experience. And a lot of people going through this world today, they don't realize that they think they're driving a shopping cart with this body and all this miserable and just pushing along through my life and carrying all my burdens and whatever. But at the same time, they realize, man, don't you realize you got a UFO? You got like this underwater, over water, up in the air, up into space kind of vehicle that you can go use. If you understood what it was, that's why people teach meditation, because ignorance, or the lack of knowledge, so ignorance is not stupidity, the lack of information that we need and answers to solve our human problem and dilemmas, that causes tremendous suffering, you see. And many great sages and teachers have been on this planet and it's teaching like, okay, it's really simple. Open up a little bit, just kind of realize that there's a lot more going on here, and you know, you're not alone really, and you never will be alone, and you just enjoy your life and keep learning, because you got all kinds of these magical features in your being if you just chill out for a little while and experiment. So I make these videos to talk about some of the practical aspects of so-called esoteric sciences and all this stuff that, you know, you can chat about and talk about for till the end of the cows come home or whatever, but just practically applying a little bit more sensitivity and not being afraid to just open up our mind and our heart to something a little more expanded about our existence, because we get taught so many things in this world. I mean, like, and the media is like jamming things down our throats, like someone with a big stamp and they're hammering something on our brain, like, okay, here's what you got to believe, you know, and we're going to hammer it home until you believe it or whatever. But there is an element of nastiness or evil, or what do you call it, that does not want most human beings to see how glorious they are. They don't want us to have an expanded perception of our existence and know all kinds of things and learn and be able to understand and enjoy this life. They don't want that, because it takes away certain powers, you see. And without getting into the specifics of our you know, crazy world that we live in, the political situation, but deep down we know that we're not meant to be these robotic slaves that like run a cash register with a camera on you all the time, and you know, you're like, okay, you know, you report to work and you punch in, you push your little his fingerprint there, or your eye scan, and prove who you are. And you know, this is where it's going here, where you're just like a slave, and your body is like being used for some who knows what. You know, people are doing research on stuff they never even realized that later on that same research was used for some nefarious, nasty purpose. So, again, back to the core of this particular video, I want to talk about telepathy because it's essentially tuning our own being, our own brain, you know, making our body a little more refined and so on. There's things you can do to get it really super refined, and people do that, but just cleanse it out a little bit and refine our senses a little bit and start opening up, because a lot of times it's just we would perceive more things if we just looked in a different direction. It's like we could go through our life with blinders on, and someone says, "Oh, you missed all this incredible stuff that's all along the way that you were just looking forward like this." So the good news is that, you know, certain meditation can be like a helicopter. Okay, you can see the past and you can see this time doesn't matter anymore. You know, there's a certain place in our consciousness where time doesn't exist. You see, it's not a new teaching. It's nothing new. You know, this is old story. But the practical example of it, the practical experience of it, is like people have these moments in life where it spontaneously happens. Somehow they just whatever. There's many different reasons why people have a powerful experience. They realize they're not this body, and time stands still for a while, and so on. And they just realize something else is happening with our consciousness. There's a saying in esoteric tradition that the consciousness is one, the forms are many, you see. There's one consciousness underlying all forms. It's a mind-blowing conception, but when we understand that, it gives us total liberation, because, like, we just have to make a connection between our form and that underlying infinite consciousness, and then all of a sudden, like, that's the knowledge of all knowledges. Because that opens a door. It's kind of like being let out of a cage and say, okay, now I can explore the whole world. I don't get it all at once. It's not like you get enlightened and now you're omniscient, you know everything on every planet and every solar system. It just means that the door is now open to you for some very, very expanded types of understandings about your existence and about other existences, and that we're all just one being. And the ultimate liberation is to, you know, we play this beautiful role in our life. We go dance our dance, and we go play our role, and we do our little mission or whatever, or do our purpose and bring our songs and art or whatever into the world. And then delightfully we just say, okay, like a bird gets all the way to the top of the tree, okay? A bird, they just, you know, they can go anywhere in the tree. They got wings, so they hop around. And then they get to the top, you know, when the tree crashes, when the tree gets old and falls, the bird just like, okay, I'm flying away now. And our existence, we are like a bird on the back of a horse. I used to think like a rider on a horse, okay, but even more so like a bird, because we're here. We take a little berth, we take a little seat on this chariot that we're on, this body that we're on, and we take a little ride, and the idea is to hold the reins and control those horses and get, you know, we're riding on this, we're directing our life, and then when the time comes, we just get off. That's the whole idea of meditation. Is the intention of meditation, and the whole, again, telepathy, the concept of discovering from practical experience that we're not this body, that our consciousness is linked to others, the consciousness is linked to the other cosmos, to the information plane of the universe, and is part and parcel of it, and we come from it and we go back to it. So we are all assembled from this soup of materials, you might say, and energy, and then we're all going to go back into that. But in the meantime, there's a consciousness that is, like, again, the consciousness is one, the forms are many. It's like the water in a sponge. The water is there whether the sponge is there or not. You put the sponge in the water has the sponge, goes all the way, the water goes all the way through the sponge. This body has life in it. Okay, at one time, the life in the body drops the body, you might say. And that's kind of how it works. You know, we're supposed to be attached. We're supposed to be the bird at the top of the tree. When the tree gets cut down by the lumberjack, we just fly away to get another tree. You see? So there's a lot of symbolism And the point again of this particular discourse here is to talk about the non-limits, the open space of our own existence, the vast consciousness that we can explore within in a deep silence. There's a place of silence where there's no words need to be there, but there's a whole lot of answers just flowing right in. And a lot of people understand this already. It's kind of like you go to the top of a hill and you have these questions. What's on the top of the hill? You get to the top of the hill and you look over and you go, okay, I get it. I see everything now. You see, I see my situation. And there's a liberating experience by knowing that our awareness has links to every other awareness. And on a practical level, we can test that. And telepathy between friends and family and all that's the small scale stuff. We want to get into the vast rain cloud of noble things that our telepathic consciousness can immerse itself in and absorb answers to questions that we never even thought to ask. So thanks again for listening, and I hope I've inspired a few people. I know I don't have a huge audience, but it's very rewarding to me. I do get some commentary, and I've been doing this for quite a few years, so a lot of people have seen some of my videos, and my point is just to explore these things. I've just a reporter. I'm pointing people in a direction so that you can learn these things for yourself and have your own journey and not just take it from something, okay, well, here's what the so-and-so said, and, he must be right. But have your own journey and get your own answers. So thanks again for listening. And like and share.